Hey folks, I am Chaz and welcome back to my lousy attitude. Well everyone, everybody hates Star Wars and it's all your fault, so says this invert article. The Acolyte isn't ruining Star Wars, you are. Let's take a look at this flaming piece of crud. No one hates Star Wars more than those who claim to be Star Wars fans. Sure, the past few years have given the fandom plenty to critique. The sequels splintered the fan base beyond recognition. That's putting it mildly. Lucasfilm's efforts to expand the galaxy on the small screen have been mixed at best. That's putting it mildly as well. And in some cases, criticism is inevitable. But not everyone will find something to like in the franchise's recent output. At a certain point, though, the discourse reaches a fever pitch, and even Lucasfilm's most promising projects get swept up in the drama. The Acolyte is not the first Star Wars project to face the brunt of fan backlash, and it likely won't be the last. But the new live-action series is also one of the best additions to that galaxy far away in a long time, embracing decades of nostalgia while also thinking critically on the franchise's legacy. No, the use of member berries and changing things to your own political agenda is not embracing decades of nostalgia or thinking critically on the franchise's legacy. It also might be the most diverse of Star Wars story yet, and while that's definitely a boon for marginalized fans, it made the Acolyte the target of a vocal splinter of the fandom. Actually, that vocal splinter is most of the old fandom. You've driven them away, and now we've basically decided, you know what, we're just going to tell you what we think of you. Whether you know them as the Fandom Menace or a cluster of blue checkmark users on Twitter, it's impossible to escape their orbit. The same folks that review bomb diverse swings like Marvel's Eternals, which sucked, and the Lord of the Rings prequel, The Rings of Power, which sucked, have now set their sights on The Acolyte, which is a boring mess. To hear them tell it, the series is the worst thing that's ever happened to Star Wars, and its showrunner, Leslie Headland, is just as fiendish as Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy. No, we think she's just as fiendish as her old boss, Harvey Weinstein. To them, the Acolyte's woke agenda is something to be feared. It's ruining Star Wars, it's poisoning pop culture itself, it needs to be stopped by any means necessary. This is why there's a force against it. This is why there's pushback. It has absolutely nothing about exploring Star Wars. It's everything to do with interjecting a very small and very vocal minority's political agenda. We realize how ridiculous that all sounds, right? Actually, no, it sounds true. God, I hope so. Well, then God's not listening. But if not, let's try this. The Acolyte is not actually ruining Star Wars, but the bigoted backlash is definitely ruining the fun for everyone else. This is not fun. This show is boring. It is a gorgeous disaster. I've said this recently. This is a Shaw Brothers knockoff, and not a very good one. It's not outright shocking to see something like The Acolyte marred by racist, misogynistic, and even anti-LGBTQ backlash. That Star Wars devotees could share multiple bad faith treatises about the series on YouTube or tank its audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is just par of the course at this point. This is, after all, the same fandom that launched consistent attack against actors like John Boyega, Kelly Marie Tran, and Daisy Ridley. A, the attack against John Boyega was of very few people, and most of that was them commenting on the fact that he was a black man, where everybody thought that the stormtroopers, wrongly so, were all Maori Chiesmen. As far as Kelly Marie Tran and Daisy Ridley, they did not have any pushback because of them personally. They had pushback because their characters were horrible. The same fandom that were publicly admonished by Ewan McGregor himself when Obi-Wan Kenobi faced similar pushback. Obi-Wan Kenobi was hot trash, and Ewan McGregor knew it. This is what always comes out whenever you point out that the crap that Hollywood is putting out these days is absolutely nothing but political agenda. The problem is that nothing has changed. In the 10 years since the vocal minority suddenly crowd out against diverse casting and more nuanced storytelling, they've yet to actually learn their lesson. Diverse casting has nothing to do with it. Nuanced storytelling has nothing to do with it. It is injecting your personal politics and your agendas into the story. That does not make them more nuanced. That makes them crap and only a device for leftist indoctrination. Their arguments are bleeding into even the casual discourse surrounding The Acolyte. Comments on set design and screenwriting have turned into misogynistic microaggressions against Hedlund. Even critiques on the series have been weaponized by its haters. There's no room for nuance when it comes to The Acolyte. You either stand with the series, flaws and all, or you're irrevocably against it. This is not something that we've set up. This is not something that the fandom menace set up. This is not something that people that are critical of the later series have set up. This is what you have done. You have basically come to say that every criticism has absolutely nothing behind it other than misogyny or racism. The origins of this toxicity aren't difficult to figure out. At the end of the day, it boils down to entitlement. Many male fans, here it comes, feels like they own the franchise and are determined to safeguard it from anyone that could challenge that ownership. That makes it hard for disparate groups to coexist, and it's even harder for any non-white, non-male creatives hoping to tell stories within the franchise. There was nothing stopping any non-white or non-male creatives from telling stories in this franchise. Oh my god, this is terrible. Star Wars has always been inclusive. I have known so many people that were Star Wars fans from so many different areas. It's not even funny to be even come up with this, to even say this is just absolute crap. Yes, Star Wars has always been a boys' brand. Even the fan gender breakdown comes out 70% male, 30% female, or thereabouts. It's the exact opposite for romantic comedies. It is a boys' brand. However, it doesn't mean that girls can't be there. I've known many a female that have been Star Wars fan. My wife is a Star Wars fan. My mother is a Star Wars fan. My daughter is somewhat of a Star Wars fan. This is nothing more than pushback against criticism and using the terms racism, chauvinism, misogyny in order to do so. This is trying to stamp down dissent. What began as a relatively niche issue has become Lucasfilm's biggest hurdle moving forward. The Acolyte can weather the storm. After all, it's been well received by critics. But what about the fandom and its relationship to those guiding the franchise now? As the discourse spirals out of control, it's getting harder to ignore it outright. There's no easy way out, but something has to change. Otherwise, this vocal minority will end up ruining Star Wars for the rest of us. Actually, we'd like to make Star Wars good for everybody again. Disney Star Wars has done absolutely nothing but separated the old fandom from the very, very vocal minority of the new fandom. Let's come over here to that Park Place and confirm The Acolyte performs worse than Ahsoka. Global minutes viewed less than Ahsoka's U.S. premiere viewership. And this is it, man. Nobody is watching this. We've all checked out. Star Wars has gotten to such a point that it's not even worth turning on the TV anymore. But I will be watching the rest of this gorgeous disaster, even though it is so deathly boring. This report confirms that The Acolyte performed worse than the most recent Star Wars live-action series, Dave Filoni's Ahsoka. According to a blog post on StarWars.com, Lucasfilm reported that the debut episode of Ahsoka garnered 14 million views, making the series #1 globally on the streaming platform. In a footnote, Lucasfilm noted that a view is defined as total stream time divided by runtime available. There's your kicker right there. The total runtime of the first episode of Ahsoka was 56 minutes and 25 seconds. However, the series released 2 episodes back-to-back for its premiere. The second episode's runtime totaled 43 minutes and 57 seconds. That means combined, the 2-episode runtime was 100 minutes with 22 seconds. The Acolyte released 2 episodes on its premiere date last Tuesday on June 4th. The total runtime for both episodes totaled 73 minutes and 55 seconds. That means the total minutes viewed globally for The Acolyte was around 820 million, while Ahsoka was likely around the 1.4 billion minutes viewed. However, it's unclear how accurate the Walt Disney Company's reporting actually is. Data tracking company Nielsen reported that Ahsoka's 2-episode premiere garnered 829 million minutes viewed in the United States alone. As noted by X user, now it's known that total minutes viewed dropped to 575 million minutes viewed the week of its finale. That was worse than Andor, which racked up 674 million minutes the week of its finale debuted. Andor had a 3-episode premiere on September 21st, 2022. According to Nielsen, it racked up 624 million minutes viewed. Looking at other comparisons, The Acolyte performed far worse than Obi-Wan Kenobi as well as The Mandalorian Season 2. Obi-Wan Kenobi premiered with 2 episodes in May 2022 and racked up 958 million minutes viewed in the United States alone, according to Nielsen. The Mandalorian Season 2 premiered on October 2020 and racked up 1.030 billion minutes. Wow. It also only had a single episode premiere. Even The Mandalorian Season 3, which also had a single episode premiere, brought in 823 million minutes viewed in the United States, according to Nielsen. It's abundantly clear that this show is a failure. It's also another piece of evidence that under the leadership of Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger, Star Wars is bleeding viewers and fans at an extremely rapid rate. While there is an abundance of blame to go around on Kathleen Kennedy for greenlighting the show and Bob Iger for continuing to allow Kathleen Kennedy to greenlight Star Wars show like The Acolyte, showrunner and former assistant Harvey Weinstein Leslie Headland also bears a significant brunt, and she knows it. She told the New York Times, "If it doesn't succeed, it's because of me." That's really scary to think about. And yes, ma'am, it didn't succeed because of you. It was said that Kathleen Kennedy said, "Make a Leslie Headland show." Guess what? You did. It sucks. The Acolyte is boring. There's absolutely nothing about it that's different, new, or worthwhile for that matter. Guys, take it elsewhere, but really when it comes down to it, this is the ravings of a leftist mass media knowing that the jig is up. Thanks for joining me, folks. Like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification button for when I post again. Leave a comment. It really helps me pick up traffic. And thank you very much. Later days.